Hey, everyone. I'm not going to say it. Yes, I am going to say it. I told you so. And I've been saying it for nearly 20 years. And people before me, like Jerry Sieper, were saying it. And everyone keeps saying it. Border Patrol agents keep saying it. Our law enforcement officials keep saying it. And now whistleblowers are again saying it. You know what they're saying? That our wide open and porous, nearly 2,000 mile border is being taken advantage of by, again, the drug cartels, which in the last 20 years have amassed even greater power in Central America and Mexico and the United States, and human trafficking networks, which are exceeding and far exceeding, in some cases, the drug cartel networks. And some of them are just one and the same, and some of them are enemies of each other. And we have been saying this over and over and over again, begging for somebody to pay attention, because it's not just numbers of people crossing the border. And sometimes I get it. Those numbers can weigh down. You're like tired of hearing about it. Oh, 700 came in this through Roma, Texas. Another 1,000 came through Yuma, Arizona. Unaccompanied minors coming in through McAllen, Texas. But this is about people. And these are about children. And this is about our children and our national security. And we put people in office to protect us. And the number one job of our commander-in-chief, the number one job, whether that's President Trump, whether that's President Biden, whether that was President Bush, whether that was President Obama, is to protect our nation's borders, to protect us, to protect our national security, to protect the American people. And frankly, they are not doing that. In fact, it's just the opposite. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to tell you about this amazing woman, and I am not going to take anything away from what this woman, by the way, who is talking about an intake center in the city where I was born in California, Pomona, California. Yeah, I was born there. The city of Pomona. And it suffered, and I used to write stories for the Daily Bulletin all the time about the gangs and the drugs and the weapons on our streets and the children killing each other in our own country, because I wanted people to know what was going on. In fact, those were my first biggest stories. My first big national stories were about this. So why does it take almost 20 years later for a whistleblower to come to Congress and then everybody's writing it like it's new news? Like, whistleblower tells Congress that the government is delivering migrant children to human traffickers. We've been saying that every single night on television. Are the lawmakers just not listening? That's why I'm an investigative journalist. That's why journalists like me and others who are out on the border. Remember Jenny Terre? She used to work for me. She is out on the border now, covering stories. She's young. She's starting a new career. Others that are out there covering stories, like Michael Yon, who's been doing this for decades, like me, screaming to the rooftops. In fact, he is out in the Darien Gap. And we're going to get into that a little bit more too. And I believe that based on what I'm seeing, because I stay in touch with him, they caught, covering the stories out there, I think they caught dengue fever, him and some other journalists. So we're putting ourselves on the line. We're telling stories that are real and tangible and screaming to the rooftops and letting the American people know and letting the world know what's going on. And our lawmakers are just going, with their lips until what? Until there's kind of this other explosive testimony. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing this. I'm glad we have the GOP back in the House. This should be a bipartisan issue. I'm coming back with a little bit more, but first I want to tell you about Allegiance Gold. Yes, I do. I want to tell you about Allegiance Gold. And if you don't trust me, just do the research yourself. That's the important thing. Do the research yourself. But now Allegiance Gold will allow you to protect what you've worked so hard for, your IRA, your 401k. You need to diversify now, folks. You just look at what's going on around you. Look at what's happening to the banks. I know people that lost money invested in the stock market in certain banks have lost all the money they invested in those banks because those banks collapsed. And guess what? We see how powerful the other banking systems are. So you put your money inside an account and then what? And then what? They don't like you. They're so woke. They don't like your business. They don't like what you stand for, and they remove you. They did that with Donald Trump Jr. They tried to do that with Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. We saw it happening in Canada. And believe me, it's coming. Credit systems, crediting systems, all of this BS kind of woke Marxist stuff it's down the pike. So right now you want to diversify. And like I said, look into it yourself, not just because I told you. But let me tell you a little bit about Allegiance Gold and why they are a part of this show. Why they're a part of this show. It has the highest ratings in the industry. 5 stars with TrustLink, AAA rated with the Business Consumer Alliance. And guess what? They have an A+ from the Better Business Bureau. You're going to get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. You tell them that Sara sent you, you get $5,000 of free silver. So don't wait. Call or click today, 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A, no H. Or go to protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, folks, but we can prepare. That's 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA or protectwithsara.com. No H. Okay, so Tara Lee Rodas, she worked for the Human Health Secretary in 2021 before blowing the whistle on the unaccompanied alien children's program. That's unaccompanied minors coming across, the border. Some of you who watch Fox News have seen me on Sean Hannity or listen to my podcast regularly, know that that is something that I care deeply about. And in fact, I'm going to be making an announcement in a few podcasts ahead. I'm going to be joining a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to rescuing children that are being trafficked. And it's dedicated to fighting human traffic and slavery globally. And I'm very proud of Rosi Orozco, a very good friend of mine. I have had her on the show before as well. I introduced her to Fox News and to Senator Marsha Blackburn. She's just an amazing human being, first served in Congress in Mexico, and was the first woman and first person ever to pass legislation in Mexico against child trafficking and human trafficking. And she has been targeted by the cartels and by the human traffickers. They've given a green light I know with one of the major cartels in Mexico to take her out. And she is thankfully not there now. And she is living in a very great place here in the United States of America and very secure. And she has dedicated her life to saving children. So now we have, and this is for years. I mean, in fact, when I interviewed her, before I go on to talk a little bit about Rhoda's testimony, which is amazing, and I hope to bring Tara Lee Rodas onto this show. But when I first met Rosi, it was when I was with Glenn Beck at the Blaze. Think about that. I was working on stories. We had this show called For the Record years ago. It might have been 2012, 2013, maybe around there. And I had Rosi on the show, and she was just so amazing. And we've stayed friends ever since. Never given up the fight, Rosi, you and I together on this, and I will be forever. She'll be my sister in fighting human trafficking. So we have been talking about this now for decades. I showed my producers some stories that I wrote back in 2005, and I felt very old when I realized that my producer was just a young lad in elementary school while I was writing that story, and I was a young reporter. But I was like, I've been doing this a long time. And I've seen the suffering, what has happened to children, and far worse now than ever before. You want to know why? Because nobody has ever stopped it. Because we have allowed our border to be an open sieve, and we have perpetuated these atrocities. And more so under President Biden than any other president, that I've ever seen. More so under Biden, because this is what his administration wants. And not only are the children suffering and dying, but that are being trafficked into our country, but our children are suffering and dying. They're being poisoned with counterfeit pills. They are being killed with fentanyl and other narcotics that are coming across that border. Is cheap labor that important to our corporations? That's okay? Is that okay with anybody out there? I don't think so. I hope not. Not with any good human being. People should be here legally. And if we have a workers program, I am all for that. I absolutely 100% believe in a strong workers program in the Western Hemisphere. I want to see our manufacturing jobs come back from China, come from the rest of the world, come here to the United States. Go to, El Salvador. Bukele's ready for you. Go to Guatemala. The future presidents there are ready. You want to have workers here? Yes, let's do it. But let's do it legally where they come and then they go home to their families, because that's what we should be doing. We should be uplifting the nations in the Western Hemisphere. But instead, this is what we are doing. We are assisting in the trafficking of children. And I will say that again. I am with Rhoda on this 100%. Rodas is absolutely right. We are perpetuating human and child trafficking. We are to blame. Our lawmakers are to blame. And more importantly, the White House is to blame. I want to pull this. This is from Fox News, foxnewsdigital.com, just doing such amazing work right now. This is what Rodas said. She's the whistleblower. She gave firsthand testimony on a sophisticated network of child migrant smuggling. The hearing, the border crisis, exploitation of unaccompanied alien children, was held by none other than the great Jim Jordan. I love him, a good friend, and somebody who I believe the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, and somebody who truly cares about these issues. And this is the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration, Integrity, Security, and Enforcement. And it had Health and Human Services whistleblower Tara Lee Rodas. Again, I'm giving her full credit. She stood up, she spoke out. She detailed with HHS at an emergency intake site in Pomona, California. I'm going to tell you, Pomona can be very dangerous too. I was born Pomona Valley Community Hospital. Yes. That was my hospital. In fact, I had my daughter in that hospital, and it was the same doctor that delivered me. So he delivered me, and then he delivered my first daughter, and he retired after that. I was like the beginning and the end, and then everything in between, that happened there. But Pomona also has a lot of issues with gangs. And those were some of the big stories that I did when I was at the Daily Bulletin and working for the Los Angeles News Group. And so this is what Tara says, Tara Rodas. She says, I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in their home country, smuggled to the U.S. border. I've been reporting that over and over again, and ends when Office of Refugee Resettlement delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. She is absolutely right. This is absolutely shameful. It is so disgusting. It is so disparaging that in the land of the free and the home of the brave, we have children being trafficked in networks that are using them for sexual and physical abuse and physical labor, that we have children that are crying in the darkness for someone to save them after being allowed into our country by our president, who has left that border wide open so that the drug cartels can pocket more money than they know what to do with, so much money that they outarm our law enforcement officials that are out there on the border every single day trying to do their job with their hands tied behind their backs. Can you imagine what it must be like for a child? Just put yourself in their shoes for 1 minute. Have nobody around you to protect you. Nobody that really cares about you. Thinking you're going to meet a family member in the United States, only to be shuffled through a system of monsters that have probably raped you, that have probably harmed you in ways that are unimaginable, to be brought into this country and to finally think when you see a Border Patrol officer or an Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer or an HHS official, thank God I'm saved now, only to be delivered into the hands of another monster. Think about that. I can't even imagine. And it's not okay for us to turn our backs on that. It is not okay for you to hear me say this and then to say, well, not my problem. Oh, it will be your problem one day. It will be, because I watched it happen in Pomona. I watched it happen in Rancho Cucamonga. I watched it happen in Los Angeles. I've seen it happening on the streets in Philadelphia, in Chicago, where innocent people are caught in the crossfire of deadly gang violence and children that have been completely and utterly abused to the point where they grow up to be monsters as well. You can't ignore it, and you can't run away from it. That's how terrifying this is. So although Tara Rodas is, in my book, an absolute hero for speaking out, I'm ashamed that we have a country, we have lawmakers that have failed to protect our children, the children that are being trafficked, and that only embolden these drug cartels and these human traffickers. These are real monsters, folks. You don't need to go to a horror film. All you need to do is read what happens across that border and in our country to innocent people by these monsters. Let me give you some stats before we take a break. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection statistics, the number of unaccompanied alien children who arrive at the border has swelled from 33,239 in 2020 to more than 146,000 in the fiscal year 2021 and 152,000 in 2022. So far this year in 2023, there have been more than 70,000 encounters of unaccompanied children. And every single day, I love Texas Department of Public Safety. Thank you all for what you do, and for our Border Patrol, for my great state of Texas. Every week, I can't say every day, sometimes every day, but every week, I'll get photographs from the guys on the front lines who are out there doing God's work, trying to, protect our nation, and in the same time, saving children that are being trafficked. And I could look in my phone now, and I won't show them the pictures now because I don't have their faces blurred. I believe that children have the right to privacy and to their own dignity unless their parents give me, a go-ahead that it's okay to interview them or something. And then that's all right. And usually it's about easy subjects when I do that. But these children are trafficked. They are put in trunks of vehicles. They are covered up with tarps in cars. And then when they find them, when people like Lieutenant Olivares or, my good friend Lupe or any of those guys find them, these kids are terrified. They're shaking. They realize that they've been rescued, but they don't trust adults. And then when, the cops are like, well, hey, who's the dad? Who's the mom here? And then they find out, oh, none of them. They're traveling with strangers. They're traveling with strangers. Just think about that. It's hard for me to talk about this, without breaking up or breaking down. Sometimes it's too much what you see. And I'm sure everybody has a cross to bear and everybody's seen horrible things. But when it happens to a child and when it happens to our children, can't we just demand more? Can't we just say no more? Is it that hard? Is it that hard to get involved and say, I'm not going to let this happen to another child, especially for those of us who know the pain that they've been through, who understand what it is like to be alone and to be afraid. And some of these children, you interview them and, inside they're so broken up that you wonder how they're going to get through this without having someone to lift them up, without having faith in God. They've been through so much. So if anything, thank you so much, Tara, for speaking out, for setting the record straight with these lawmakers. I've known many whistleblowers. I'm going to end it with this. Guys, they're also superheroes because I've worked with whistleblowers in the past. I'm going to bring them on a future show whose lives were literally destroyed by the government because they blew the whistle. You see them testify, you think, wow, Congress is going to back them. They're going to back everything that they say. They're going to make a difference. And look, hey, I believe that Congressman Jordan, I believe the chairman will. I believe he will hold firm to changing this with this GOP, because the first time too that I've seen, not like the typical establishment types, but congressional members like Andy Biggs, like Jim Jordan and others who absolutely, Senator Ted Cruz, who absolutely believe that there needs to be something done, that there needs to be actual action and not just talk. We can't just talk about this. So I pray for Tara. I hope I pronounce her name correctly, because I think she deserves all the credit in the world for what she has done. Tara Rodas, thank you so much. And to all the other whistleblowers out there that have done this, and for those of you who've worked with me on stories and have trusted me, and I know it's been hard, and I know it always hasn't been perfect. And you know who I'm talking about. For those of you who have blown the whistle and exposed this corruption inside our government so that we could just be the great nation our founding fathers wanted us to be, thank you so much for all you've done. You deserve all the credit in the world. And because you blew the whistle and because you reached out and you did it the right way to our senators, to our lawmakers, hold them accountable. Make sure that they protect you the way that they promised. And for us, we're going to make sure that we take your words to heart. And God, I hope so for all of you listening out there. Let's all be a part of making a difference here. Let's save our children. Let's save these children. You have the power to do that. You really, really do. No one can take that power away from you but you. It's up to all of us, guys. And when we do that, guess what? We're going to be saving our country. Glass half full, right? At the same time, that's like a plus. That's like a win-win. You can't go wrong, right? You just can't go wrong. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. Please follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on Twitter at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at scarterdc. Get a little emotional here. God bless you. God bless our nation. And God bless all the children of the world who want to be a part of our great nation. We're going to make it so that you can get here and that you can be safe. Thank you.